Imagine a young king marked by leprosy, challenging one of the greatest commanders of the Islamic world in a time when honor and faith intertwined with war. In today's video, we will dive into the Battle of Marj Ayyun, fought in 1179, a tense and dramatic moment that tested not only the courage of Baldwin IV, but also the very survival of the Kingdom of Jerusalem itself. You will discover how a teenage king, facing a devastating disease, led his army in a bold attempt to halt the advance of Saladin, the relentless Sultan of Egypt and Syria. Who emerged victorious? What were the strategies, and what was the price paid for this fight in the hills of the Holy Land? Stay until the end to understand the surprising details of this episode, one of the major turning points in the Crusades, where the fate of a Christian crown hung by a thread. Get ready for a story of courage, tragedy, and eternal lessons left by one of the most fascinating kings of the Middle Ages. In the 12th century, the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem was a fragile entity, constantly threatened by Muslim forces seeking to reclaim the territories conquered by the Crusaders. After the conquest of Jerusalem in the First Crusade, the Crusader states maintained their existence through fragile alliances, limited resources, and unwavering faith. Baldwin ascended the throne in a scenario of constant military and political tension, facing both internal and external adversaries. On the other side arose Saladin, whose military skill and visionary leadership were unifying Egypt and Syria under the banner of Islam, paving the way for an unrelenting struggle for control of the Holy Land. In the heat of 1179, Baldwin, already marked by the progression of leprosy, learned that Saladin had launched an attack in the north of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, threatening the Christian fortresses near the Jordan River. Determined to stop the enemy's expansion, the young king gathered his forces, composed of the armies of the kingdom's nobles and the warriors of the military orders, especially the Templars and Hospitallers. At Baldwin's side were leaders such as Hugh of Lusignan and the Master of the Temple, Odo of Saint-Amand. Confident, Baldwin led the advance toward Marj Ayyun, a plateau near the city of Beirut. Saladin, always astute, had already anticipated the Christian reaction and set up a carefully planned ambush. As the Crusaders advanced, the cohesion of their troops began to break down. Some knights, driven by the thirst for glory and plunder, broke formation to attack Saladin's forward forces, disregarding orders for caution. It was then that, emerging from the nearby hills, the Muslim army launched its counterattack. Caught by surprise, the Christians were surrounded. The uneven terrain and lack of discipline worsened the situation. The heavy cavalry, the greatest strength of the Crusaders, became easy prey for Saladin's archers and infantry. The battle quickly turned into a crushing defeat for Baldwin and his men. Even weakened by disease, Baldwin remained on the battlefield as long as he could, trying to reorganize his troops and open a corridor for escape. His personal effort, mounted on his horse and surrounded by his personal guard, was crucial for part of the army to manage to flee. Chroniclers like William of Tyre report that the king, even while physically suffering, showed an almost superhuman courage in the face of imminent disaster. Among the prisoners captured by Saladin was Odo of Saint-Amand, the Templar master, a heavy blow to the order. The Muslim victory further cemented Saladin's reputation as an invincible leader and weakened the Crusaders' position in the kingdom. However, despite the defeat, Baldwin's presence on the battlefield, his tenacity and his ability to save part of his men prevented the collapse from being complete. The young king, although deeply wounded in reputation and resources, showed a resilience that would continue to mark his life and reign. After the bitter defeat at Marj Ayyun, Baldwin and the remnants of his army returned to Jerusalem deeply shaken. The losses in men, resources, and prestige were severe. Important nobles were killed or captured, and morale among the Crusaders took a hard hit. Saladin, in turn, took advantage of the victory to consolidate his control over Syria and Egypt, setting the stage for even bolder offensives in the years to come. Despite the catastrophe, Baldwin did not give in to despair. demonstrating impressive leadership capacity even as leprosy deteriorated his body. The king quickly sought to reinforce the kingdom's defenses. He requested military support from Europe and worked to strengthen internal alliances, aware that Christian unity was vital in the face of the growing threat from Saladin. The capture of Odo of Saint-Amand had profound consequences for the Templar order. Saladin refused to accept a ransom for him, seeing in the Templar master an enemy too formidable to be released. Odo died in captivity, which forced the order to elect a new leader amid the crisis. Politically, the defeat at Marj Ayyun also inflamed internal tensions among the kingdom's barons. Many began to question the young king's military strategy and the leadership of the Templars. Some chroniclers point out that Baldwin faced covert opposition from certain nobles who saw in his physical condition a weakness for the throne. However, Baldwin, with his sharp political intelligence, knew how to contain the discontent by distributing lands, titles, and positions to ensure the loyalty of the main feudal lords. His government, despite the adversities, managed to maintain the kingdom's stability for a few more years. For Saladin, Marj Ayyun was more than a military victory. It was a demonstration that the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem was vulnerable. Inspired by this success, he intensified his campaigns to weaken the Crusader fortresses throughout Palestine and Syria, eventually aiming at Jerusalem itself. For Baldwin, however, the battle served as a bitter lesson. From that moment on, he would be even more cautious in his military movements, understanding that the survival of the kingdom required not only bravery on the battlefield, but also refined strategy, skilled diplomacy, and iron resilience, qualities that the leper king would demonstrate until the end of his life. Marj Ayyun also heralds the approach of a new dark chapter in the Crusades, in which Muslim pressure would intensify on the Latin states. Baldwin, despite his frailty, would continue to be an unlikely wall against this advance for a few more years. If you enjoyed this story of courage and medieval drama, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment about what impressed you the most in Baldwin IV's journey, and subscribe to the channel to follow more incredible episodes from the history of the Crusades. See you next time.